What if a war wasn't lost on the battlefield? What if it was lost in the living room? The Vietnam War is often called the first television war. For the first time in history, millions of people could watch images of a distant conflict unfold almost every night on their television screens. But most people don't realize the story begins long before the cameras arrived. To understand why television changed everything, we first need to understand how the war began. The roots of the Vietnam War stretch back to the Age of Empires. For decades, Vietnam was part of French Indochina, a French colony in Southeast Asia. Many Vietnamese wanted independence, and during World War II, a revolutionary leader named Ho Chi Minh emerged as a key figure in that struggle. After Japan's defeat in 1945, Ho Chi Minh declared Vietnam independent. But France wanted its colony back. What followed was a long and brutal conflict known as the First Indochina War. In 1954, France suffered a major defeat at Dien Bien Phu. The French withdrew, and Vietnam was temporarily divided into two parts. North Vietnam was led by Ho Chi Minh and his communist government. South Vietnam was backed by Western powers, including the United States. The division was supposed to be temporary. National elections were expected to reunify the country, but the elections never happened. Instead, Vietnam became one of the front lines of the Cold War. The United States feared that if South Vietnam fell to communism, neighboring countries would follow. This became known as the domino theory. By the early 1960s, American military advisors were already helping South Vietnam fight communist forces. Then came a turning point. In 1964, an incident in the Gulf of Tonkin led Congress to give President Lyndon Johnson broad authority to expand American involvement. Soon, hundreds of thousands of American troops were fighting in Vietnam. But here's the twist. Unlike previous wars, journalists had unusually broad access to the battlefield. Television crews traveled with soldiers. Reporters filmed combat operations. Cameras captured events that earlier generations would never have seen. For the first time, war was entering people's homes almost in real time. Most people don't realize how revolutionary this was. During World War II, news footage was often heavily controlled and arrived weeks after events occurred. In Vietnam, television news could show scenes from the conflict within days. Americans sitting down for dinner might suddenly see helicopters landing in combat zones, wounded soldiers being evacuated, or villages caught in the crossfire. The war was no longer an abstract headline. It had faces, it had voices, it had consequences. This is where it gets strange. Military leaders often believed they were winning. Government officials frequently spoke of progress. Yet the images appearing on television sometimes told a different story. Viewers saw confusion. They saw destruction. They saw a conflict that seemed far more complicated than the official statements suggested. One moment in particular became a symbol of this growing gap. In 1968, Communist forces launched the Tet Offensive, a massive coordinated attack across South Vietnam. Militarily, the offensive was costly for North Vietnam and the Viet Cong. American and South Vietnamese forces eventually repelled the attacks. But television changed how people interpreted the event. Many Americans had been told the enemy was weakening. Then suddenly they watched dramatic footage of fighting in cities across Vietnam. The real reason Tet mattered wasn't simply military. It changed perceptions. If the enemy could launch attacks on such a scale, many people began questioning whether victory was truly near. Television amplified those doubts. Night after night, viewers saw images that challenged official optimism. Public support for the war gradually eroded. Anti-war protests grew larger. Political divisions deepened. Trust in government declined. And television was at the center of it all. But here's another twist. Television didn't create opposition to the war by itself. The war was already controversial. What television did was make the reality impossible to ignore. It connected distant battlefields to ordinary households. A conflict taking place thousands of miles away suddenly felt personal. In many ways, Vietnam became the first war where public opinion evolved alongside the fighting itself. Military strategy now had a new battlefield, the television screen. Governments around the world took notice. Future conflicts would be managed differently. Media access would become more controlled. Information would become a strategic weapon. The lessons of Vietnam reshaped how wars were reported forever. Most people remember Vietnam as a jungle war. Others remember it as a Cold War conflict. But perhaps its most lasting legacy was technological. It was the moment when television transformed war from something citizens read about into something they could witness. A camera crew carrying a few reels of film could influence millions of minds, and in doing so, they changed not only the course of a war, but the relationship between governments, the media, and the public forever. The Vietnam War wasn't the first war fought with guns and bombs. It was the first war fought under the glare of a television screen. Thanks for watching this short history of the Vietnam War. If you learned something new, hit the like button and subscribe for more great videos.